All right, let's move on to those sand roads. Again, just like with um, our other trade route, the Silk Road trade route, we also have technologies and ideas that spread. And sea trade, you'll see, is impacted in China and Africa. One of the most important things is some of the environmental factors, much like on the silk trade route, you had a lot of factors that made it dangerous. You still have that on the sea trade. The caravanserais were cities that popped up. Bukhara, Samarkand, Kashgar, uh, Dunhuang. These are areas. But when you think about the sea trade route, on these trade routes, not necessarily having the best technology as far as knowing where you are. We're having to worry about the winds. Like these are all very important things. So let's look at some of the Swahili city states. So let's go back here. When we think about, we're looking at Africa. Um, in Africa, you have the Swahili city states. These are along the coast of Eastern Africa. So here's Madagascar. And then here, a lot of these are all the caravanserais that have popped up there. This is going to flourish through the rise of Indian Ocean trade and Islam. Africa's resources are going to bring traders. Africa is going to see a merchant class rise, which is going to make clan chiefs are going to appoint themselves as kings, making it very powerful and giving them a lot of power. What you're going to see is you're going to see changes coming to from farming to merchants. And that's what you're going to see. But you're only going to see this along the coast. You aren't necessarily going to see this everywhere else. So let's look at Great Zimbabwe. Look at this. This was built, and to me, this is just fascinating because, like, look at this wall. Their technology is, and how this was built is amazing back then.
Stretched across a tree-peppered expanse in southern Africa lies the magnificent ruins of Great Zimbabwe, a medieval stone city of astounding wealth and prestige. Located in the present-day country of Zimbabwe, it's the site of the largest known settlement ruins in sub-Saharan Africa, second on the continent only to the pyramids of Egypt. But the history of this city is shrouded in controversy, defined by decades of dispute about who built it and why. Its name comes from the Shona word Madzimbabwe, meaning big house of stone, for its unscalable stone walls that reach heights of nearly 10 meters and run for a length of about 250 meters. For its grandeur and historical significance, it was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1986. Back in the 14th and 15th centuries, it was a thriving city. Spread across nearly 8 square kilometers, Great Zimbabwe was defined by 3 main areas: the hill complex, where the king lived, the great enclosure, reserved for members of the royal family, and the valley complex, where regular citizens lived. Rulers were both powerful economic and religious leaders for the region. At its highest point, the city had a bustling urban population of 18,000 people and was one of the major African trade centers at the time. What enabled this growth was Great Zimbabwe's influential role in an intercontinental trade network. Connected to several key city-states along the East African Swahili coast, it was part of the larger Indian Ocean trade routes. The city generated its riches by controlling the sources and trade of the most prized items: gold, ivory, and copper. With this mercantile power, it was able to extend its sphere of influence across continents, fostering a strong Arab and Indian trader presence throughout its zenith. Archaeologists have since pieced together the details of this history through artifacts discovered on site. There were pottery shards and glassworks from Asia, as well as coins minted in the coastal trading city of Kilwa Kisiwani, over 1,500 miles away. They also found soapstone bird figures, which are thought to represent each of the city's rulers. And young calf bones, only unearthed near the royal residence, show how the diet of the elite differed from the general population. These clues have also led to theories about the city's decline. By the mid-15th century, the buildings at Great Zimbabwe were almost all that remained. Archaeological evidence points to overcrowding and sanitation issues as the cause, compounded by soil depletion triggered by overuse. Eventually, as crops withered and conditions in the city worsened, the population of Great Zimbabwe is thought to have dispersed and formed the nearby Mutapa and Torwa states. Centuries later, a new phase of Great Zimbabwe's influence began to play out in the political realm, as people debated who had built the famous city of stone. During the European colonization of Africa, racist colonial officials claimed the ruins couldn't be of African origin. So, without a detailed written record on hand, they instead relied on myths to explain the magnificence of Great Zimbabwe. Some claimed it proved the Bible story of the Queen of Sheba who lived in a city of riches. Others argued it was built by the ancient Greeks. Then, in the early 20th century, after extensive excavation at the site, the archaeologist David Randall McIver presented clear evidence that Great Zimbabwe was built by indigenous peoples. Yet, at the time, the country's white minority colonial government sought to discredit this theory because it challenged the legitimacy of their rule. In fact, the government actively encouraged historians to produce accounts that disputed the city's African origins. Over time, however, an overwhelming body of evidence mounted, identifying Great Zimbabwe as an African city built by Africans. During the 1960s and 70s, Great Zimbabwe became an important symbol for the African nationalist movement that was spreading across the continent. Today, the ruins at Great Zimbabwe, alluded to on the Zimbabwean flag by a soapstone bird, still stand as a source of national pride and cultural value.
Go backwards here. Let's go into China. So let's look at China. So when we look at China and we look at the trade that went on with China, so the Yongle Ming was enamored with stuff from different areas. He also was enamored in getting his stuff out there and trading. That was kind of a big deal to him. So Zhang He, who is an eunuch, which is somebody who is basically castrated and put in charge of a female to take care of her, but they castrate him so he doesn't want anything to actually do with her, just to take care of her. But the Ming Dynasty is basically infatuated with getting more out there, learning more, not necessarily conquering territory, which is interesting. They didn't want new territory. Instead, they wanted to bring the world to some kind of an order. And so you kind of see here how you've got the voyages of Zhang He. Notice his path and how he stayed along the coast. Now, to me, it's kind of interesting if he would have kept going, because if you look at the dates here, in the 1400s, he was traveling. Had he kept traveling, he probably would have made it to California, present-day California, before Columbus. So that would have been a game changer. So some of the ideas that go along with this. You've got your Swahili civilization. And remember, when it comes to Africa, we've got the Bantu people. Bantus are always known for agriculture and language and spreading that across Africa. Well, the Swahili civilization takes some of the Bantu and some of the Islamic learning, and it is blended, which makes the Swahili civilization very, very unique and culturally diverse. The Swahili and Indian Ocean world, what you're going to see is rulers are going to find attraction of wealth and power with African commodities. Again, in Africa, you've got the gold, the ivory, the quartz, the leopard skin, all of these things that are very important resources that are not found elsewhere. Islam is also going to be big in trading because of this. Islamic merchants, really big, feel like this is a good idea. So you're going to have an African merchant class that is going to grow in Great Zimbabwe. You're going to see permanent trading settlements that are going to facilitate the exchange of ideas. And of course, spread religion. Monsoon winds and understanding these monsoon winds is what is going to help people trade along the Indian Ocean. And that's something that we talked about last year, is understanding those monsoon winds and that trade. So you're not only going to see trade in Indian Ocean trade, you're also going to see it in the I'm going to butcher this, the Srivijaya, maybe I didn't too bad, empire. And so notice here is, so India is over here, right here, up here, close to where it says to India, up by our little compass here. Here's a great map to show you. So there's India, and this is what we're zoomed in on. So this is the Srivijaya Empire. Why would this be so important? Well, if you think about it, if you're going to go from China and you're going to want to come through India, you'll notice that the only way to do that is to pass through this area here. Well, if you're controlling all of the ships going in and out of here, that's kind of a big deal. So you can tax them. You can make sure that if there's something on there you want, that you get a piece of it. So this empire is going to be humongous. It is going to end up being very powerful and a big deal. One thing that we will see along this is Angkor Wat, which is in Cambodia. Okay. And we learned a little bit about that last year, Angkor Wat.
In Southeast Asia, an abandoned city sprawls magnificently across the heart of Cambodia. Its hundreds of monuments contain more stone than the Egyptian pyramids and cover more ground than modern Paris.
Notice the Hindu right there.
This is Angkor, the capital of an empire that once controlled most of Southeast Asia. Its people were called the Khmer, and more than 500 years ago, they fled this grand city. To the outside world, the city existed only in obscure travelers' tales. Then in 1860, a French naturalist named Henri Mouot stumbled across the ruins. He wrote about the city and drew it, attracting the attention of the wider world. But the questions had only just begun. Who were Angkor's builders, the empire called the Khmer? And why had the city been abandoned? Archaeologists and historians have pieced together this story. Angkor's greatest marvel, Angkor Wat, served as a shrine, an observatory, and a funerary temple. Research suggests that it took almost 30 years to complete and was finished in time to bury an important king. But Angkor Wat had hardly claimed its place on the horizon when disaster struck. Drawn by its increasing splendor, the Chams, from what is now Vietnam, attacked and burned the city. When the capital was rebuilt, the king built a walled city, Angkor Thom, to protect them in time of war. But the Khmer story came to an end not long afterward. 22 kings over 500 years had worked the land until it began to fail. Rice harvests dropped and stone monument building ceased. Early in the 15th century, the Kingdom of Siam made profitable raids into Khmer territory. A climactic battle around 1431 brought about the end. All but abandoned, the Khmer capital was lulled into a centuries-long sleep by the encroaching jungle.
Okay, so that gives us a little bit more about Angkor Wat. Now, notice that all of these civilizations that are so big end up like dying based on a lot of times lack of food sources or some type of natural disaster. Sometimes also going in and, oops, sorry, wrong way. Also going in and being destroyed by maybe invaders. So let's look at the city of Malacca. Here's part of Indonesia, Malaysia. So you got Thailand. This is going to be a springboard for the spread of Islam in this area. Sumatra is going to be a very cosmopolitan city. The diversity is going to flourish. How is diversity going to impact state building, commerce, and religion? Well, if you are diverse and you are welcoming to other religions, one, if you're diverse, you're going to learn about a lot of different religions. And if you understand different religions, it's going to help you understand your people. Therefore, you're going to understand how to rule them and hopefully give you a better understanding on how to rule people who will listen to you, work with you. This won't be a whole new thing. So let's go ahead and look at the technology along sea trade. So what you're going to have is the astrolabe, very important. The junk and the dhow are going to be two ships that are going to emerge during this time period. The emergence of these caravanserais and port cities are going to be very important. So if a captain wanted to sail from Malindi to on the east coast of Africa to Calcutta in southern India, what months would the monsoon season give favorable winds to? So this is going to be something that we're going to be looking at. So if you're going to be going from one place to another, you want those winds behind your back, so whichever way they're pushing. So that would be a way for us to look at that. But notice how all of these cities pop up. Again, here is your cities along the African coast. Here are some of your other cities. This is your Shirabia. I can't say it without looking at it. Empire. So Sriavia. There we go. Here is the Khmer Empire. That's where Angkor was. Srijaya. Srijaya Empire. Oh my goodness. Here is Champa, Vietnam. Angkor is also in Cambodia. So these are the areas that end up becoming big areas of trade, of cultural exchange. You're going to see a lot of this area transformed by the experience of trade. Srivijaya. Hopefully he'll say it better than I do.
You think history's a bunch of names and dates that never change, and your history teacher who hates you makes you memorize them for no reason at all? Wrong. History is alive! Historians are constantly finding new documents, artifacts, archaeology, stories, translations. What if I told you one of the most powerful trading empires of all time was all but lost to history until 100 years ago today? Even the people living on top of it didn't know anything about it. Talking about a sea-based trading empire, powerful enough to serve as the main trading post between India and China. Today's illustrative example, the Srivijaya Empire. What up? I'm I'm Ben Freeman from Freemanpedia.com, where I try to translate AP World Modern to people like you around the world. And in that pursuit, I find holes in the content where there's not a lot of resources for you. That's where we here at Illustrative Examples step in. And so today I'm taking a relatively obscure trading empire that was only found 100 years ago and breaking it down. But it's way too early in the morning to start yelling words like thalassocracy and Mahayana at you. So let's get some context. Contextualization is just taking something rather specific and putting it into the grander story of world history. It's the Star Wars crawl. You know, it's that thing at the beginning of the movie where they put it up there to let you know what's going on before you're just thrown into some random action and fighting and killing. You need some background. Who's this guy? What's that about? Why am I talking about this at all? That's contextualization. On your essays, you're going to need to let the reader know what you're talking about and what context you're talking about it, as opposed to just specifically describing one thing. You need to put it into the greater picture. I've said this 1,000 times. This is a mandatory skill. SAQ, DBQ, LAQ, most of the Qs are going to have this as a thing you need to do. So make sure that you are contextualizing whatever it is you're saying in any essay you're writing. Okay, 1 minute on the clock. Okay, Freeman, keep it brief. Don't ramble like an idiot. You look like an idiot every time you put up a minute clock, and you can't do it even though you have the power to edit and easily cut it down. You've yet to do it. Come on. Let's go. AP World History starts with 2 units, both covering the era 1200 to 1450. The first one is called the Global Tapestry, and it's a global check-in on the different regions. Like today, we're in Southeast Asia. Unit 2 is Networks of Exchange, which is all of the connections that weave the global tapestry together. You see what I did there? And 2 of the biggest regions in the entire course are India and China. In this period, India is dominated by a thing called the Delhi Sultanate. Centered in Delhi, it is an Islamic sultanate that rules over northern India, while southern India is dominated by a collection of Hindu states. China, on the other hand, is a bit trickier, with 3 different dynasties ruling over it.
Wow. Sorry, guys.
And if you think that's confusing, and oh no, there's 3 different groups ruling over China, the Mongols will be here soon. And
Definitely look this video up on your own if you would like to fast forward.
So if you jump from Unit 1, where you're just checking in on the places, to Unit 2, where you see the networks of exchange, you're going to see between India and China, the most famous is going to be the Silk Road, connecting them overland. But don't sleep on those maritime trade routes that take you through Southeast Asia. As the course begins, there's no bigger player in the trade game than the Srivijaya Empire. Srivijaya was a trading empire that lasted 700 years and served the trade route between India and China. Srivijaya dominated the waterways of Southeast Asia for 700 years. As a trading empire, that also served as a Buddhist center of learning for India, Southeast Asia, and China. All right, did I do it? That was succinct. I took it from this big, broad, the opening units of the course, and I took it down to a specific trade empire, talking about what's important about it along the way. Did I do it? Did I do it? This is impossible. You know, I control the timer. You think I would just edit it down and make myself look good? I just don't think it's possible. I think it's physically, humanly not possible for someone to speak for under a minute on the Srivijaya Empire and its context. So don't worry. I guess that was close. Anyways, keep your contextualization short and to the point. Don't ramble on and on like I do. It's only worth a point, but it is worth a point, so make sure you do it. All right, enough contextualization. Let's just get to the example. Today's example takes us to Southeast Asia. And I'm not talking mainland Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, none of that stuff. I'm talking about you head out to the sea, out to the island, out to the archipelago. And for us, today, that's the Srivijaya Empire. Okay, heads up. I'm going to use a very scary word here, so if you need to cover your ears and come back and watch this later, that's fine. This is a big, scary word, but it shouldn't scare you because it's an awesome word and you can use it all the time and sound historical. Okay, Srivijaya was a thalassocracy. Did you get that? A thalassocracy. That's how you describe Srivijaya. I know. Calm down. It just means an empire, or most of your empire, is overseas. Think the British Empire, the Dutch Empire, the Phoenicians. That's a thalassocracy. Srivijaya was a thalassocracy. And for Srivijaya, it's all about real estate. Location, location, location. If you're in a boat and you're trying to get from India to China, you have to go through Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from China to India, you have to go to Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from Champa to India, you got to go through Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from India to Cambodia, you got to go to Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from Japan to India, you got to go to Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're in East Africa and you're trying to go to China, you got to go to Srivijaya. If you're in the water going from the Indian Ocean to East Asia, you got to go through Srivijaya. And because of that location between India and China, it became the primary trading hub between the two. The capital, we call it today Palembang. Back then, the Chinese called it Zhugang, which of course means, yeah, you said it, giant harbor. That's how they referred to it. It's a giant harbor where we trade our stuff, so your capital is now named big trading harbor, and that's where we'll go trade our stuff. And it wasn't just one port or a couple ports, it was massive. A Persian trader said with his fastest ships, he couldn't reach all of the places within the Srivijaya Empire. It would take well over 2 years to do that. So this isn't one little trading post empire with just a few little spots along the way. This is a massive network. The location that brought them all the trade was 2 straits that they controlled. First, the Sundra Strait. Second, the Malacca Strait. Look at that map. Try to get between India and China and not go that way. What are you going to go, Papua New Guinea? Australia? Come on, wasting your time. You're going to go through Srivijaya. And Srivijaya was Southeast Asia's hottest trading spot. This place had everything. Rice, cotton, indigo, silver, aloe, resin, camphor, ivory, rhino tusk, tin, gold, rattan, timber, gems, exotic birds, iron, sandalwood, pepper, cinnamon, ceramics, cardamom. They even had, the thing, like how the Dutch are all obsessed with spices and they go find this place and they call them the Spice Islands. They didn't discover the Spice Islands. There were people on the Spice Islands. They called them the Banda Islands, and that's the only spot on Earth where you could get clove or nutmeg. So don't act like you're super special, Dutch people. You're basically Columbus. You found something that people already found. And they weren't just a series of random people peddling on the streets. This was organized. They had huge warehouses where they brought in all of these products and stored them for an ease of transfer at the markets that made Srivijaya the go-to market in the region. My favorite part about this trading empire is that the Chinese, when they went to Southeast Asia, just assumed that everything there was from Srivijaya and that Srivijayans made all of this stuff. Imagine going into Walmart and being like, wow, y'all make all this stuff here? I gotta trade here more often. They don't make a lot of stuff there. It's just that's where it's being traded. But don't tell the Chinese that, because then they could just go get it themselves. So due to their rising power, Srivijaya quickly became a tributary to the Song Empire, along with other local powers like the Champa. Remember Champa? Champa rice. The fast rice. Do you remember that? But here's what's weird. College Board doesn't care about them as a trading empire. They don't. They're the most massive trading empire, one of the most recent major archaeological finds in the history of the planet, and they don't care about the trade at all. They don't care about the list of all the things I said. What they do want you to know is that it's an example of a Buddhist state, meaning it is run by Buddhists, for Buddhists, with Buddhist interests at heart, and Buddhist missionaries, and trips to India and China. It is, at first, a trading empire, but also it's run by Buddhists. I mean, think of it. They are the trading hub between India, where Buddhism is from, and China, where Buddhism is raging at the time. And trade routes, after all, don't just bring trade and gold and tin. They also bring ideas, and one of those ideas was Buddhism. Before we get into any about how Buddhism is important in Southeast Asia and why they're illustrative, let's talk about the elephant in the room for a minute. 101 years ago, no one even knew this place existed. People that lived on top of the ruins just assumed they were some other kind of ruins and had no clue that this was actually an ancient Buddhist trading empire. Because it was 100 years ago, in 1920, a French historian started connecting the dots of all the different evidence out there of other empires, other people, other traders, other leaders talking about this one place where there was all of this trade going on. Accounts of Indians, Indian monks, Indian leaders, Sri Lankan leaders, Chinese emperors, Persians, Buddhists, all these different groups of people are going around talking about this one place. The problem is they're all using a different name. So if you're just randomly flipping through history, you're going to be like, oh, there are 8 different places to go trade. But in reality, those 8 places were one. So what the Chinese called Sanfoki or Foshi, and what the Javanese called Suvarnabhumi, and the Arabs called Sribuza, they were all the same thing. And it's not just linguistics and spellings and pronunciations that were different. So you have these people back home in their places talking about how this is where we go trade, this is the trade spot to go, and that could be any number of places. But luckily, there were people who actually went there and wrote a lot. And merchants aren't necessarily always writing down about cultural things around them. But I tell you who does do a lot of that, those are religious pilgrims, and in this case, the Buddhist monks. And seeing how much this was such a maritime trade route, you can imagine all the other world travelers you'll learn about in later sections are going to go through this area, talking about your Ibn Battutas, your Marco Polos, etc. So I could be like your stupid textbook and be like, here's a source from this guy, and here's what this guy said, and here's what some other random guy said. But no, we're going to talk to one guy and see what he says. His name, Yijing. Yijing was a Chinese Buddhist monk who was one of the hundreds of Chinese Buddhist monks who made the journey from China to India. This is a global dude. He was from China. He took a Persian boat from Guangzhou to Srivijaya to get to India. This guy isn't some scrub pilgrim. This guy's going to the #1 Buddhist university on the planet. At the time, it was called Nalanda University. And at the time, it was the #1 spot for any Buddhist pilgrim to congregate and learn more about Buddhism near the homeland of Buddhism. And I know I wasn't going to mention anyone else, but this is where Zhuangzang meant. If you know anything about the monkey story or Journey to the West, very famous Chinese story, this is one of the spots he stayed at. I think he stayed there for about 2 years. But our man Yijing stayed there for 11 years. Think of it the way the great scholars and athletes of today flock to Clemson University. It's kind of like that. Clemson would destroy Nalanda at football. I'd love to see that. But Nalanda would destroy Clemson at Buddhism, so maybe not. Anyways, back to Yijing. He spent 11 years studying Buddhism here at Nalanda University. And I know I keep saying university. It's not a university in the sense you would think. It's more a collection of libraries and scholars learning together, more than, say, like a campus with dorms and terrible food. So Yijing spent 11 years here with the purpose of studying Buddhism, collecting texts, translating texts. Here's the problem, though. If you're going from China to India, that's quite a long trip, especially back then. So Srivijaya is a perfect place to stop. And India is not always accessible by sea. The monsoon winds are no joke. So some people chose to wait out the monsoon season by hanging out in Srivijaya. Yijing was one of those guys. He stayed there not only on his trip to India, but on his trip back, both times for over 6 months. And this isn't just some random hotel where he's flipping through books. He noticed that there were a ton of Buddhists here. And in fact, this was the one spot in Southeast Asia where Buddhist scholars congregated along merchant trade routes. If you wonder why Srivijaya wasn't found so early on, they didn't leave that much stuff behind, but the stuff they did leave behind are Buddhist stupas and statues and other Buddhist stuff just all over Srivijaya and Sumatra. So in writing about Srivijaya, Yijing said this, quote, "In the fortified city of Palembang, Buddhist priests number more than 1,000, whose minds are bent on learning and good practice. They investigate and study all the subjects that exist, just as in India. Their rules and ceremonies are not at all different. If a Chinese priest wishes to go to the West in order to hear and read the original scriptures, he had better stay here 1 or 2 years and practice the proper rules." End quote. So in the Global Tapestry unit, if your teacher's like, "Students, please tell teacher of an example of a Buddhist state in Southeast Asia in the Global Tapestry period," you better respect Yijing. Let your teacher know about the once forgotten thalassocratic great trading empire of Srivijaya. But how can this actually help you out? You're in luck. I have found 2 examples from recent AP World History exams where you could flex your new Srivijaya knowledge and earn yourself some points. So let's look at some exam examples. All right, so like I said, there are 2 examples from recent years that you can use here. So we'll go through them. They're both LEQ examples. Now, Srivijaya doesn't pop up by name. It is a relatively new thing, kind of like past things that we've been going through the illustrative examples. The ones I've been choosing to make these videos on tend to be the newer ones. So this one wouldn't have popped up as an example 10 years ago. But I was able to find 2 from the past 3 years, and last year was the weird pandemic DBQ, so that doesn't count. So the last 2 full tests they've given, there have actually been 2 of these in the LEQ section. So let's take a closer look. All right, back in 2018, the second LEQ. Remember 2018? That was nice. Anyway, the second LEQ reads like this. So they give you a little background on it, a little background knowledge. In the period 600 to 600, different factors led to the emergence and spread of new religions and belief systems such as Buddhism, Confucianism, and Christianity. Thanks for that, College Board. Now, you can show me the prompt. Develop an argument that evaluates how, by the way, develop an argument. Get used to seeing that. That's something they want you to do. An argument is, imagine you're in a debate and you need to pick a side. And on that side, you need to stand up and make points that support your argument. That's all they want in these LEQs, is you to make this argument and support it with information. Develop an argument that evaluates how such factors led to the emergence or spread of one or more religions in this time period. So they're asking about different factors that led these religions to spread. Well, the growth of trade is the primary answer they're actually looking for on these, and the trade routes. The only problem on this one, though, is our good friends at Srivijaya started it around 650 CE. That's going to put us on the other side of it. Now, depending on the question and how they decide to score them, that may be close enough, but that may be too far away. However, this was before the new curriculum, so maybe in future iterations of the test, you can see 600 BC, that's old. In future iterations of the test, they may have something to the effect of from 600 CE to 1450 CE, and then that's Srivijaya time. But otherwise, it's the same concept. If you just said that trade was one, then you're going to get a thesis, and you throw some background in about trade routes like I did in my contextualization a minute ago, and then you start adding evidence, you're going to be fine. The other one's from 2019, also an LEQ. Let's look at that. In the period 600 BCE to 600 CE. So once again, we're kind of out of luck here on the time span, but otherwise it's the same idea. So again, in future iterations of the test, they will not go back this far. So you're going to be looking for 600, probably 600 CE to maybe 1200 if they wanted to do like an early thing. I doubt they would, but if they wanted to go 600 to 1450, that would probably make more sense. So imagine that we're doing that because again, the course has changed. So the rise of large-scale empires led to increasing regional and trans-regional trade. Okay, interesting. Now here comes the prompt. Develop an argument. Told you, you're going to have to start developing arguments. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the rise of one or more empires contributed to an increase in trade in this time period. One empire rose and built a large trade network that helped everyone around it by being the new trade center in the region, Srivijaya. So those are two. Again, the curriculum has changed recently, so the time periods are a little bit off. But if you're looking for one of these ideas and you needed an illustrative example of a Buddhist state or even a trading state, Srivijaya gets you both there. All right, thanks for watching. And once again,
Okay, so that is just to give you a really good idea there. And I'm going to go ahead and skip over. You can look up John Green's crash course on the Indian Ocean. I do believe we watched it last year, but feel free to look that up again. Indian Ocean trade, give yourself some more information. It's always good to have it. And there's our sea routes.